Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelly from Qualio, and I'm your host here at From Lab to Launch. Thanks for joining the show today. We've published over 50 interviews with innovators in life sciences across the world. It's been so inspiring to hear the stories of perseverance and innovation to improve human health and save lives. If you've enjoyed the conversations, consider subscribing and giving us a review on Apple or Spotify. And if you want to be on From Lab to Launch, please see the application linked in the show notes. Today, we're excited to talk with Dr. Dunn, who is the author of the book Wholistic Kinesiology and Perfect Health in Paradise. She's also the CEO of My Happy Genes and creator and innovator of Wholistic Kinesiology and Holistic Methylation. For over 30 years, she's practiced natural medicine, researched, and taught her groundbreaking techniques to hundreds of individuals who, like her, are on a quest to find an alternative solution to allopathic medicine. Dr. Dunn began her career in the natural health industry after a long bout of ill health, which drove her to seek out alternative healing methods. The results she experienced piqued her interest in kinesiology, and she decided to study and learn this amazing technique herself. She eventually developed her own techniques, combining anatomy, physiology, emotional work, bodywork, and nutrition to create holistic kinesiology. Her philosophy is to treat the person as a whole being, not just a collection of parts and symptoms. And with that, let's bring her in. Hi, Doctor. Thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, Kelly. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. We know you're an expert in natural health, care, genetics, biochemistry, mental health, and nutrition, and you have an extensive background. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, that's kind of a wide range of things, and I want to compliment you on being able to pronounce methylation.
That chemistry degree comes in handy sometimes.
A lot of people stumble over that one, and I did too when I first learned it. But so yeah, I did start my career as a lot of practitioners do, healthcare practitioners do, with my own health struggles, and couldn't find. I was raised in the medical model, the allopathic model, and really couldn't find good answers there. They just sort of seemed to want to cover up symptoms, and so that kind of led me to trying to understand where my symptoms are coming from, really looking at root causes. And so that kind of led me down the path of kinesiology, which I love, which is muscle testing, essentially. And that led me into really falling in love with nutrition, biochemistry, and then ultimately leading me down the road toward genetics. And that I'm passionate about. And as you mentioned, you kind of geek out on biochemistry and genetics and the nutrition piece, which I'm massively in love with, because it just really gets to the true root cause of diseases in a way that's, I don't think, well known yet, but is going to become well known in the future.
Definitely. You're the originator of holistic kinesiology and holistic methylation. Tell us a little bit about each of those.
Yeah, so I learned some different techniques from different people with the kinesiology, and they all seem to have, pieces of the puzzle that I liked and seem to fit together. And so I kind of put them all together in my own system, which a lot of practitioners kind of do that. They do their own system. I tried to simplify kinesiology and muscle testing and put it into a real simple system. And that I taught for many years, since 1991 through 2015 or so. I was teaching that, and largely to lay people, which, caught some flack in the medical industry, but I loved teaching just lay people how to test, supplements or test foods, or just kind of guide them in their daily life on best things to eat or take, or et cetera. And then I noticed that, in my practice, I had a very good, successful practice in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 32 years as a chiropractor, kinesiologist, nutritionist. We did emotional work. I had sort of the whole spectrum of therapies. Very, very good results. But there was a subset of people that I couldn't get anywhere with. And that, those, as a practitioner, those are the people we think about when we go home. We go, God, what are we missing? There must be a missing piece. And some other things kind of led me to believe there was a missing piece, one of which was my father, who died of cancer when he was 55, lung cancer, but he did everything to get lung cancer, smoking and drinking and not exercising, nothing healthy. But the mystery was that his best friend ended up marrying my mom, doing the same things, the exact same lifestyles, lived another 30 years. And so I went, the only thing you can say about that is that's genes right there. That's good genes.
That's biology, right? The variability.
And in the past, what we would say was, we don't know how that works. We just know that has to be genetic. We kind of parked it over there as something we didn't know how to really kind of get into and study. And then I started hearing this word methylation that we were talking about, and I was like, what am I hearing here? What is this word? And started really take a deep dive into understanding methylation, which is like one of the biochemical pathways in the body, largely affected by genetic variants that can affect how well we repair our DNA, how well we detox, how well we make neurotransmitters or brain chemicals, how well we break down histamine. It can lead to allergies. So I was like, wow, this seems big. And MTHFR was the first gene that we knew something about, the methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Enzyme is coded by a gene, and if you have a variant there, if you've inherited a variant, it can cause that enzyme to not function well. In the ultimate purpose of that enzyme is to turn folic acid into the active form of folic acid. And if you can't do that, then you can't methylate correctly, and it leads to a myriad of symptoms and phenotypes or disease risks down the line. So I started to go, whoa, that's a pretty big concept. And then, it had expanded from there. And one of the genes that I got tested on, early on I did the 23andMe, put that through some templates and got my own report. And one of the genes that kind of caught my eye was the vitamin D receptor gene, the VDR gene. Do you know about that one, Kelly?
Yeah, a little bit. Just share a little more detail there for our audience.
Yeah. So the vitamin D receptor, our DNA tells our body how to make certain enzymes, and one of which is a receptor called vitamin D receptor. So you can imagine if you don't make that receptor correctly, you don't absorb vitamin D well. And so, if you know anything about natural healing, you know how important vitamin D is for so many things, including the immune system, bone health, turns out brain health, autoimmune disease, et cetera, et cetera. Huge list of things that are associated with if you've inherited a genetic variant there. So I jumped in and I went, all right, I'm going to do the research. Went to PubMed and started researching about the vitamin D receptor. And one of the first studies I ran across was a study that showed that when you have a genetic variant there, you're highly susceptible to lung cancer when you smoke. And I went, that explains what happened to my dad. And so I have the same gene. But the other interesting thing was I had suffered from depression my entire life since I was a little girl. Always had kind of pretty heavy-duty bouts of depression. Nothing I did in my natural healing world or even allopathic world had any effect on my depression. I couldn't fix it. Now I tried everything, believe me. And then when I started to look at how does that vitamin D receptor work, what are its cofactors? So cofactors mean if you give the body higher than normal levels of a particular nutrient, it can upregulate the function of that enzyme. So for the vitamin D receptor, the cofactors were vitamin K2 and A. And so I started taking the cofactors and vitamin D, and boom, my depression was gone. 55 years of depression gone. And oh my God, I think this is happy. I've never felt it before. I've heard about it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was stunning.
That's an incredible story.
Holy moly. It changed my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, if that's true of this gene, how do we work with other genes that affect brain chemistry, that affect energy production pathways, histamine pathways, nitric oxide, all the biochemical pathways in the body? Are there other genes that respond the same way? Can we make up for genetic variants through precision targeted nutrients? And the answer was yes. And there's lots of good research behind that. And so I started to put the whole thing together in a system I called holistic methylation. So we were looking at not just methylation, we were looking at citric acid cycle, we were looking at, histamine, all the pathways that kind of interrelated. And I put together this system of how, the pathways fit together and how to look at genes that would affect those systems. And so that I taught around the country. I have over 500 doctors who actually practice holistic methylation now. And then at a certain point, I said, gosh, I think we could create a software program that would do that. And so that's where I created My Happy Genes. I started to say, oh, yeah, we could help millions of people, if we could create a software program where we do their DNA test, we analyze their genetics, look at what symptoms they're experiencing, and then give them a printout that says, here's your best diet, lifestyle, supplementation that's going to balance out your genes. And so that's what I set out to do, and that's what I've done with My Happy Genes. So, yeah.
That's awesome and incredible. I've had an opportunity to work on a few pharmaceutical products that were rooted in things like vitamins and mineral balance and those kinds of things, and then making those injectable, because you can't eat enough of a water soluble vitamin, right, to get to certain therapeutic levels depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So from that perspective, it's interesting to tie it all back to the genetics, and wow, that's wow. Just to make a roadmap that is so individual is really, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that a lot of people forget. There's no one size fits all, whether it's diet, lifestyle, supplementation. So you can't really take a multiple vitamin and satisfy what's going on. In fact, you could be throwing certain pathways out of balance with things that are in a multiple. So what we do is basically design the multiple for that person around their genetics and kind of like what their genes are doing, whether they're expressing or not. And so in that way, we just individually kind of like, it's almost like cheating.
I feel like it's that next step towards more holistic wellness, though. I mean, we've had some other folks on the show where we've talked about some personalized therapeutics, and there are lots of, like gene therapies and gene-based therapies, especially in the cancer realms, right? But how do we stop people from even getting to that place where they're dealing with the cancer? You've got to go all the way back, as
Right.
you're doing.
Right. And the thing about genes is, your genes aren't going to change, but the expression of them can change. And that's, we call it epigenetics. So you can actually change your phenotype or how your body expresses, whether it's high energy or low energy, tends to gain weight, tends to lose weight, tend to be happy or depressed or anxious, or all of those things are modifiable through the right combination of nutrients when you get it just right. So it's pretty exciting, and so therefore you can reduce your risk of cancer by understanding what is the genetic sort of process underneath that leads you to be susceptible to cancer. So it's super, super exciting. I'm really very excited about the brain chemistry part of it, and that's why we called it My Happy Genes. Because not only my personal story, of pulling myself out of 50 some years of depression, but I see this on a regular basis with my patients. They come back and they go, oh my God, same thing. I think this is happy, or this is calm. I've never felt calm in my life. Or my ability to focus is there if they've had ADD. Or one of the most exciting things is addictions. We're seeing if you flood the brain with enough dopamine, let's say, they lose their craving for addictions. And I've seen it happen with methamphetamines, with heroin, with alcohol, with, all the possible addiction kind of things. When we get our brain chemistry balanced, you just lose your desire for it. So part of my mission is to kind of change people's, it's a paradigm shift, basically. Change people's perception of, we look at depressed people and we go, can't they just be happy? Can't they just decide to be happy? You're like, no, I couldn't. But once I changed my physiology, yeah, I could. It's a lot easier when your brain makes serotonin and dopamine. And same with weight gain. We look at people and we go, why don't they just put down the donut and go for a walk? And it's like, no, their bodies are designed to hold on to weight and to have lower energy. And that's their ancestors kind of survived during times of like low calories. Therefore, they inherited the genes that make them susceptible to gaining weight very easily when there is an abundance of calories around, and makes them crave sugars. So if we design a supplement program around that, they lose their craving for sugar. They suddenly have enough energy to go out for a walk. So we have it backwards. It's not about willpower. It's about understanding why they're doing that. Why do they feel the need for sugar? Why can't they exercise? What is that? And so it's a much deeper level of understanding the physiology. I call it genetic compassion.
That's awesome. And it gives people too, I think it's empowering, because I think as someone who struggles with my weight, right? Why can't I not eat the donut? So that's awesome. And so, you mentioned earlier that you've been teaching practitioners around the world about this. You've taught about 500 so far. Sounds like reception is good and people are open to it. How is that going for you?
Yeah, it really is, because these are practitioners that I'm talking about, and a lot of them had the same experience. They're like, yeah, I don't understand. There's a subset of people that I can't really get anywhere with, or I'm constantly working on the same issue with this patient over and over again. What is that? And you look at, even people that live in the same environment. One person is struggling with heavy metal toxicity and the other person, no issue. And so you're like, what is that? That's genes. So yes, they were looking for that answer. They were looking for that missing piece of the health puzzle. And as they start to work with it, they see that paradigm shift. To give you an example, you're familiar with functional medicine? Yeah. So in functional medicine, which I'm a practitioner of, and that's the way I practiced for many years, we looked at conditions like, oh, this is leaky gut, or this is a viral infection, underlying viral infection, or an autoimmune disease, and we treated accordingly. So we attacked kind of that principle. But in the genetic kind of realm, in this paradigm shift, we go, but why is that virus there? Why isn't the body attacking it? Why isn't the body getting rid of it? Because another person could be exposed to the same virus and not get sick. What is that? So it's, again, a deeper level of understanding where does that leaky gut coming from? There's often a genetic variant underneath there that makes them susceptible to that. So it's like deeper. We're getting into causative kind of conditions. All the way from, in allopathic medicine, we're looking at, let's cover up the symptoms. They got a headache, give them an aspirin.
Right.
You go to a functional medicine practitioner, they go, maybe it's something you're eating. You go to a genetic practitioner or a holistic methylation practitioner, and they go, well, yeah, maybe it's something you're eating, but why are you reacting to that? There's a gene there. And if we give you vitamin C, then you won't react to that food and the headaches will stop. So it's like, going deeper and deeper. So it's pretty fun to find that true cause. Yeah.
That is incredible, definitely. So you started this project then to help the world become happier and healthier, making the most of their genetic potential, called My Happy Genes. You want to talk about that project specifically a little bit more in detail for us?
Yeah, and so it just all started, with over a cup of coffee on the porch.
As all good projects do.
Right. And I was talking with a friend of mine, I'm like, what if we could create a software program that would do this? So we, not only do we look at like one gene, one supplement, or one gene, one particular issue, we look at the interplay of genes. And so when I thought about it, it was like, the only thing that can do this really efficiently is a software program where we can look at, okay, what is the interaction of this gene with that gene, with that gene, with that way, calculate all the genes. And so we contacted a friend who found us a really great software development team out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, called Ingenuity Software Labs. And we proposed this to them. We said, hey, can you create an algorithm that could triangulate the gene interactions, the biochemistry pathways like methylation, and then the symptoms that the patient is experiencing. So just because you have a gene doesn't necessarily mean it's going to express. So we want to see, it's expressing. This person is depressed, they have the VDR gene, and they have this other gene too. It would calculate all those things. And they said, yeah, we can do that. So it's been about 4 or 5 years in the development, and it's a really agile program, which is awesome because when I read about a new gene that I want to add in there, I can do it. I can go on the backside.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, plug in a new gene. So what we did was we created sliders that looks at, okay, your risk of, let's say, alcohol addiction. We calculate all the genes that are associated with alcohol addiction and look at, Do you have a variant there? Have you inherited a homozygous, heterozygous, normal gene? So just to back up for a second. So you get one gene from mom, one gene from dad. If you have a variation in the normal sequence of that gene that's coded for an enzyme, let's say, that enzyme is going to be inhibited a little bit. So if you have both parents gave you basically a change in the code, that enzyme can be reduced by about 70%. So in the case of that vitamin D receptor, let's say, for me, I had a homozygous variant. In other words, my ability to absorb vitamin D was reduced by about 70%. So anyway, we look at the slider. So we calculate all the genes in a particular category, and it gives you a relative risk. So is it super high? You're highly addicted or have a risk for high addiction to alcohol, or low, or opioids, or depression, or anxiety, or fun ones like novelty-seeking behavior, or so we look at all the different mood characteristics, and then we look at your health characteristics. Are you susceptible to cardiovascular disease, autoimmune diseases, COVID infection? And so we look at a relative risk there. And this is not to dismiss our environment. That has a very real effect on the expression of our genes. So it's not like all about genes, but this is a risk. It's an underlying risk for you. And then we give your diet and lifestyle report that says, oh yeah, alcohol, safe to beneficial. I guess alcohol could be beneficial, but nightshade foods, salt, tyramine foods, all the different kinds of foods. We look at what are your best foods? What's your best diet? So is it high carbohydrate, low carbohydrate, high fat, low fat, high protein, low protein? So you can really get an idea of, okay, this is my best diet. These are the foods to avoid for me to optimize my genes. And then the supplement report will look at, okay, you have this number of symptoms. These are your genes. These are the recommended supplements for you. So those are 5 reports that we give with My Happy Genes.
That's exciting, and also I think could really, people serially diet, or they try over and over again, to stop drinking or whatever it is. And so there's so much power in the knowledge that you unlock for the body, just to know those things to help you make those better choices.
Yeah, for me too. I had read a book called The Protein Power years ago, and I sort of followed the low carb, high protein diet for most of my life. Moderately successful with it. But once I looked at my diet report, it was like, no, you need complex carbs. Higher in complex carbs, lower in fat, and lower in protein. And I was like, oh man, and people follow the keto diet and they think they should do high fat, so it's very helpful to know for your genes what is, most optimal.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, we touched on your books that you've published as well. So Wholistic Kinesiology and Perfect Health in Paradise. Then they out there? How's it going?
They're on Amazon, both of them. And Holistic Kinesiology is more of a manual, to learn how to do muscle testing. It was more designed for my course, but lay people like to pick it up. Anybody that is interested in kinesiology could pick it up. And Perfect Health in Paradise, this came from one too many vacations where I was sick. I got E. coli one time in Mexico. It just completely ruined my trip. Or you get a virus, or you get bit by something, or, So it's all the remedies you should take with you when you travel to avoid things from happening. Keeping yourself healthy on trips overseas or locally or whatever. These are the things you should take with you in case something comes up to not ruin your vacation.
That's really good to know. You said those are available on Amazon?
Yeah, they are. Third book is coming out soon. It's called Genetic Compassion, and it's really kind of what we were talking about the compassion piece of this, understanding why you are the way you are. And that, again, we kind of beat ourselves up about things that we do, but often they're genetic. Again, you were saying why do I crave these things? Why do I crave sugar? It's because your body isn't turning sugar into energy. And so where is the problem? Down that biochemical pathway. If we get the right nutrient there, it'll open up that pathway and you'll go, don't even want sugar. It's your body telling you something, not, oh man, why can't you just stop? It's just not that way at all. I look at it as a symptom, not a cause anymore. And so that's the compassion piece. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, and I suppose it'd be a topic for another day, how gut bacteria and gut health play into all of those sorts of things too, is another piece of that puzzle.
It really is. The cliff notes. There are certain genetic variants that will alter your gut flora that are going to lead to, increased small intestine bowel overgrowth, right? Bacterial overgrowth. So when you get those balanced, the body goes about clearing that all up and repairing your gut flora. So it's definitely in there. It's in the program. The Holistic Methylation program kind of addresses that, but at the core level, not like, okay, we got to put good bacteria in there or kill off the bad bacteria. So
Interesting.
Again, different paradigm.
Well, so broadly speaking, Dunn, where do you see genetic testing in natural medicine in 5 years, 10 years? What's the future of that look like?
Gosh, if I have my way, Kelly.
We'll make you queen for a day.
Right. I just would love to see everybody do that. Oh my gosh, all the things that we could prevent. I had a talk with a gentleman yesterday who lost his son to suicide and how depressed he was. He was 19 years old and went out and killed himself. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so many people who are struggling, especially with mental health issues, all kinds of issues. But I just really feel like genetics give us an incredible insight into why that's happening and a way to turn it around with natural medicine. So in my view of the world, all the medical health practitioners will start to look at natural methods and understanding the science. It is science. It's not just some natural health care guru out there saying you should eat healthy. It's science.
Right. As you rightly pointed out earlier, what eating healthy looks like from one person to the next is different. And that's what's so hard about that.
Exactly. And there's just so many people and so many different opinions about it. And so, what's right for you is going to be very different than what's right for somebody else. But I would love to see the medical establishment start looking at this first before they do prescription medications. That's not to say there isn't a place for that, but I would like to see the world kind of shift in its focus toward understanding the genetics and the natural remedies that can help that expression.
Well, and in that place where those, thinking about depression, for example, and where some of those medications might actually be appropriate, how much faster you could help someone and less side effects if you knew how those things played with certain genes and tied that all together. Then you could say, look, this person benefits from vitamin D, K, and A. This other person really does need Zoloft, right? Like you could make some different decisions there.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that would save a lot of trouble, a lot of side effects, and just a lot of heartbreak and suffering that happens in the world. So, especially
Definitely.
now, it's a big deal. Mental health is a huge problem right now,
It
and
is
worsened
indeed.
by COVID.
Definitely. If you could go back and tell yourself something at the start of your career, what would that be?
Wow, that's a great.
I love that question. It's one of my favorites.
Ah, that's a big question. I think it would be not to give up, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. When you're a natural healthcare practitioner, you think, okay, this is the best I can do. But it's the people that I couldn't get results with that I learned the most from in the long run. So, I wish I had paid better attention to the things that weren't working, you know, and
Yeah.
followed that trail because that's what's really led me down this. Everything happens in the right time, I guess, and you learn along the way. But yeah, maybe that. Yeah, and to take better care of myself along the way because it's really exhausting to be a
Yeah.
health practitioner, and a lot of healthcare practitioners don't take good care of themselves. They just kind of drive it into the
Yeah.
ground.
Well, where can people go to learn more, follow along, and connect with you?
Really good question. They could go to myhappygenes.com. They can go to holisticmethylation.com. And I don't know, do you have show notes where you can spell that for people?
We do. Yep. We'll put the links in our show notes.
Okay. On holistic methylation, you can actually take the courses. I have two levels online. So if you're interested in learning more, really understanding the biochemistry, really understanding how the genetics alter the biochemistry, they're all online there. But there's also some links to some intro videos where you can, kind of get a sense of what's going on. I'm on YouTube also, Dr. J. Dunn, and My Happy Genes on YouTube as well. So there's some videos you can watch there.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been awesome and exciting, and I can't wait to follow along and see where this goes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate your inviting me on to talk to people. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.